When your wife of 10 years looks you straight in the eye and says, "I want a divorce," something inside you shifts, whether you're prepared or not. The difference with me? I was prepared. I just didn't expect it to happen in that exact moment. The words struck like lightning out of a clear sky, but the storm had been brewing quietly for years. I'd been living in emotional silence long before she finally said aloud. Maybe she thought I'd fall to my knees, try to change her mind, ask her to stay. But I didn't. I inhaled slowly, looked her in the eyes, and said simply, "Okay," because the part of me that would have fought was already gone. I had emotionally detached long before she did. That evening didn't feel different from the rest. I was worn out, physically and mentally, after picking up extra shifts to cover for someone on leave. Every day bled into the next. I was barely managing to function, let alone hold together a crumbling relationship. I remember sitting in traffic on the way home, drenched in sweat, fantasizing only about peeling off my soaked shirt, standing under a hot shower, and sinking into bed. I grabbed fast food, a burger and fries, without even texting Sophia. I didn't need to ask. I already knew. We hadn't eaten dinner together in weeks, and when we did, it was distant and silent. She'd stopped cooking, and I'd stopped expecting. Our conversations had dwindled into mechanical exchanges, like two coworkers awkwardly sharing a cubicle. The warmth had long since left the building. I opened the front door that night to find her waiting in the living room, looking more serious than I'd seen her in months. "We need to talk," she said. No married man wants to hear those words, especially after a day like the one I'd had. We'd barely been speaking, barely even making eye contact. And now suddenly she wanted a heart-to-heart. My shoes were still on. My tie hung limp. I asked, "Can I shower first? It's been a long day." She didn't even hesitate. "No, this can't wait." I tossed my keys into the bowl by the door and turned to face her, ready for whatever this was. And then she said it. "I think we need a divorce." For a second, I was frozen. Not because it caught me off guard, but because of how emotionless she was as she dismantled a decade of shared history. She laid out her reasoning like reading from a script. The lack of connection, the loss of passion, the drifting apart. She made it sound mutual, like we'd both just let things go. But that wasn't the full story. What she called lack of intimacy had been her way of punishing me. Whenever I voiced concern about her impulse buying, whenever I tried to guide us toward smarter decisions, she retaliated. The silent treatment, turning away in bed, withholding affection. Her contempt for my caution cut deeper than any fight ever could. I tried reasoning with her. I talked finances. She heard control. She didn't want restraint. She wanted indulgence. And when I couldn't offer that, she made me pay in quiet, deliberate ways. So when she placed those neatly printed divorce papers in front of me, already signed on her end, I didn't push back. I didn't argue. I looked at her, and for the first time realized how much she no longer resembled the woman I married. Or maybe I just hadn't seen her clearly for a long time. I picked up the papers, walked to our room, and finally gave myself that shower I'd been craving. Steam filled the bathroom, fogging up the mirror, and I stood under the hot water, letting my thoughts drift, not to her, not to what we were losing, but to what I'd already lost, the laughter that had disappeared, the distance that had become our norm. I thought about the time I suggested couples therapy and how she scoffed at it. "What? You think I want to sit there like some sad housewife whining about my feelings?" That sting lasted longer than any of our fights. I expected the heartbreak to hit me in that moment, but it didn't. What came instead was release. I felt weightless for the first time in years. Because I finally accepted that I wasn't holding a marriage anymore. I was holding memories. I stepped out of that shower no longer burdened by false hope. I dried off, changed, and got into bed in silence. Nothing more needed to be said. The next morning, I brewed coffee like always, but instead of racking my brain for ways to repair the damage, I started quietly imagining a future without her. When I told her I wanted a few days for my lawyer to go over the paperwork, she just gave a nonchalant nod. From that moment on, her behavior changed. Nights out with friends increased. Her outfits changed, suddenly younger, more revealing. The clues were all there. I didn't need hard evidence. The shift in her demeanor was enough. Her heart had left long ago. My lawyer handled the rest. There wasn't much left to sort out. No house to divide, no kids to complicate things, and the savings? She'd already drained that. I wasn't bitter. I just wanted peace. She looked almost disappointed that I didn't fight for her, didn't plead for reconciliation. One night, she even asked, "You're not even going to try?" I just looked at her and said, "There's no point fighting for something you've already given up on." And that was the honest truth. I'd spent years holding something together with duct tape and denial. But deep down, I'd already been grieving what we used to be. I'd already rented a small apartment and began moving out piece by piece. No fireworks, no shouting matches. Just quiet, decisive closure. The day the divorce was finalized, I was already settled elsewhere. What stung me the most was how simple the legal part was. How easy it was to dissolve something that once held my entire world. But emotionally, that line had been crossed long before signatures hit the page. For the first time in